Once again, we take the brunt. We take the brunt of all the external stressors, all the environmental factors that are making us feel super stressed out, that are elevating our cortisol levels, that are making us feel run down, and could even be making us feel puffy and bloated. Yep, that was one of my biggest problems. Believe it or not, the same things that make us feel stressed and make us feel fatigued could be the same things that make us feel puffy and bloated. You see, I look at it two ways. We have the obvious stressors in life, things like feeling fatigued, things like being overworked, things like sitting in traffic, things like family and relationship stress. But then we have the baseline stress levels, the things we don't look at, the things that are out of our control and frankly aren't our fault. I'm talking about environmental things that are persuaded by lobbyists, by the industries, toxins, pollutants, things like that that are constantly elevating our internal physical stress levels. We don't see that because we're exposed to it every day. We only see the superficial stress, the sitting in traffic, the being generally stressed out about life, about finances, about the bills. But here's the thing. If you're someone that's dealing with that daily stress, then you're one of the lucky ones that ends up having a double whammy. You have the baseline stress that's putting you here, then you have the superficial, obvious stress that's spilling over out of the bucket. But that's okay. That's what caffeine's for, right? So many of us reach for that cup of coffee and add a third pillar of complexity. Now we have baseline stress, superficial obvious stress, and caffeinated stress. We have to take back control, or our adrenals might be the things that suffer, that end up making it so that we can't live the life that we really need to live. My name's Thomas DeLauer, and I used to be seriously overweight and very, very stressed out. I know all about being stressed out. I was a corporate executive in the healthcare industry, and it was probably one of the biggest contributors to why I had a hard time losing weight. Don't get me wrong, I'm still stressed out today, but not nearly as much as I was back then. Nowadays, I've authored a lot of publications on how to get healthier and how to change your life based on what I learned through my 100-pound transformation. You see, back then, I had a lot of really good friends in the medical community. Friends that taught me all kinds of things about how the body works. Friends that taught me all kinds of things about how the mind works and how bodies really do struggle in today's environment. And one of the things that was instructed to me was that I needed to manage my stress, but I also needed to take care of my adrenals. And when I started learning about how the adrenals work, it was fascinating. And when I started taking the measures to really take care of them, everything turned around. Because my stress was such a big contributor to why I had a hard time changing my life, when I finally fixed that issue, things started to work. Now, I'm not saying that taking care of stress was responsible for me losing 100 pounds. Not at all. But I am saying that it was a catalyst that started giving me the energy to be able to get down that path. See, what's the point in losing weight or changing your life if you're not going to feel good? Who wants to feel low energy when they're trying to lose weight or change their lives? Defeats the purpose, right? We want to lose weight because we want to feel lighter and we want to have more energy. So this is where we truly have to understand cortisol. And I want to explain this to you because cortisol, by and large, gets a really bad rap. But we shouldn't be looking at cortisol as a bad thing. I'm here as an advocate for cortisol, but we truly have to know how it works in the body. You see, cortisol is a response to stress. So much marketing and all these commercials and infomercials out there want you to feel that cortisol is bad because cortisol can contribute to fat accumulation and cortisol can do this and that. But no, cortisol is the response to our body's stress. It's a modulator. When your body recognizes that you're stressed out, your body increases cortisol to try to bring it down, try to bring it back down to earth. The problem isn't the little spikes in cortisol that we have. The problem is when it's elevated for too long. And that's where those environmental factors come in again, the ones that are constantly nagging at our body without us even knowing. Let me give you an example of how cortisol works. Have you ever gotten a bill in the mail that you weren't expecting to get? You open it up and it's thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds, but more than you expected. You know that feeling you get in your stomach, that acidic, that pit feeling where it's just like your heart sinks into your gut for a minute? That is the response of the adrenals. Well, cortisol is affecting that. Let me give another example. Have you ever narrowly missed being in a terrible car accident, just by the skin of your teeth? You know that feeling you get right after where your heart is pumping, you feel the acidity in your stomach, and you have to just stop and breathe for a minute? Well, your adrenals are responsible for that too, and cortisol is responsible for helping to bring you back down to baseline. Now I want you to imagine that happening at a small scale all the time inside your body. That's what being under stress can do to you. It can be very, very detrimental. So without the adrenal glands, we wouldn't ever be able to come back down to baseline from that. But consequently, we would never be able to react to that either. We'd never have a fight or flight response. The adrenals are responsible for allowing us to become alert and respond to a situation. It's an adaptation system. Just like if we saw a tiger or a mountain lion coming at us, we would know to either fight or run away. I hope that most people would choose to run away. So what ends up happening when we're constantly taxing the adrenals and we're constantly under these states of stress, both obvious and not so obvious, it starts to wear things down, which means they're not able to respond as well, which means you're no longer able to produce the right responses and your body could be thrown out of whack. This is when cortisol levels get skewed. This is when aldosterone levels get skewed and all these other catecholamines that the adrenals are responsible for. This is the problem, not the fact that we have cortisol in the first place. Now that that's clear, imagine our adrenals working overtime, grinding day in and day out, baseline stress, and then having additional surges coming in from work stress. You can see how everything starts to fall together. This is about the time when you go and grab a cup of coffee, or you run down to Starbucks and grab that 4-shot latte, right? Well, that's just the issue. Caffeine, although it's not terrible, it does have an effect on exacerbating these kinds of issues because now you're adding an artificial stimulus that's adding an artificial stress on top of the baseline and superficial stress. Again, you can see where I'm going with this. Now, so much of this baseline stress is not our fault. Remember that. We can't control all these environmental toxins that are affecting us. We can't control all the radiation and the energy that is causing our baseline stress levels, but we can control some of the other things like our food. When I'm talking about this adrenal fatigue kind of thing, there's a lot of people out there that'll say adrenal fatigue doesn't exist. You see, if you look on the online communities and most of the stuff that you see out there on the internet, you're going to see this commonly referred to as adrenal fatigue. And that's okay, it's a broad blanket statement. But you're also going to find a lot of people that say adrenal fatigue doesn't exist. Well, let me set something very, very straight. The medical community doesn't recognize adrenal fatigue. That doesn't mean that it doesn't technically exist. I fully understand. The medical community has a hard time diagnosing adrenal fatigue because it's broad, it's vague. You can't really just say because you're tired or because you're low energy that you have an adrenal fatigue issue. That would be a pretty broad blanket statement and would be pretty dangerous for a medical professional to say. However, a lot of what the community does notice is adrenal insufficiency. You see, the adrenals produce different things, a multitude of different things. Aldosterone, DHEA, cortisol, all these other mineral corticoids, things that I'm not going to go into detail with right now. And if you look at the output of the adrenals, you can clearly see that when under stress, certain components may not be excreted by the adrenals as much as they should be. Now again, I'm not a doctor and I'm not claiming to be one, but if we start looking at how the adrenals really work and the level of stress that we're under, it starts to make quite a bit of sense. I'm a realist and I don't say anything without science or without references, but this is something that I've experienced personally through my own transformation and that I can attest to. Now here's where one of the biggest problems lies, and this is where I'm here to help you with a solution. You see, because adrenal fatigue is not widely recognized, it means that a lot of the information that's out there on how to start making the changes to fix it or to feel better potentially are pretty widespread and vague as well. But what we have to do is we have to look at what stabilizes the adrenals and what really makes a big effect on our stress levels to begin with. And that is where we look at minerals. You see, so much of how the adrenals function is based on minerals. And here's the problem, is a lot of our food supply these days is totally demineralized. We have an epic widespread problem with the demineralization of our food. You see, soils don't have as much in the way of minerals anymore. Even some of the water supply doesn't have as much of the minerals anymore, which directly trickles down into the foods. And if minerals play a part in balancing our adrenals, you can see how that can potentially be hard when it comes to balancing our stress. Remember the beginning of this video, I mentioned about puffiness and bloating? Well, that's because the adrenals have something called aldosterone. And they produce this aldosterone that helps us regulate fluid. And if we're not paying attention to the right minerals, sodium, potassium, things like that, the aldosterone can't do its job as well, which means your body has a hard time regulating fluid, which means you might retain more water, which means you might crave more salt, which throws off things even more and therefore makes you feel a little bit puffy, all while feeling pretty tired. So the trick is understanding food and taking the appropriate steps to start taking back control of our stress and even our adrenals. Look at me. I was a perfect example of someone that was puffy and that was dealing with stress. Do the math. It adds right up. If you are stressed, plus you feel puffy, plus you feel a little bit tired, you don't have energy, you very well could be dealing with an issue like this. So I focus on getting the right minerals at the right time. Now, you can't just go and add salt, you can't just go and add potassium and try to remineralize that way. See, there's a lot more to it than just that. It's all about timing, it's all about indoctrination, it's all about doing things right. So many people will go on a juice fast, or so many people will go on this long, extensive fasting period trying to fix their bodies, only to find that they actually make things worse because they don't have the true science, they don't have the true research, or even just the baseline knowledge and education to do it properly. That's why I've created the 11-day adrenal reset. The whole idea behind the 11-day adrenal reset is to not make you fast, to not make you have to juice fast, but to eat real food, real human food, just timed properly with the appropriate mineral balances so that we can feel good. If we can start having energy, then we can get ourselves to where we need to go. It's not a matter of getting from point A to point B as fast as possible. It's about getting from point A to point B as healthy and as smart as possible so that you have the most energy in between. Because if point A is the beginning of feeling good and point B is the end, you don't want to get to point B super fast. You want to enjoy the ride between point A and point B. And that's what it's all about. So the whole purpose of this 11-day protocol is to take a lot of the knowledge that I've learned over the years, the knowledge that I've used to help hundreds of thousands of people, literally, change their life to start feeling better, to start getting energy so that that energy can be the catalyst to make good food choices, so that you can have an inflection point and turn your life around so you're not feeling stressed out every time you hop in the car to go to work. So you're not feeling stressed out when you pull up in the driveway, potentially having to face your family that you don't know if there's going to be an argument or a fight or not. So that you don't feel stressed out every time you go to the mailbox to open up an envelope that might be another bill. So that you can control that and start taking back control of your life. And as always, with any program that I write, I have a 100% money-back guarantee, 0 questions asked. So for literally about the cost of what you'd pay for the coffee that you shouldn't be consuming, you can get on your way to not needing that coffee, simply by taking control of what we know works and doesn't work within our bodies. We have to remember, there are factors that are out of our control these days, and these factors leave us no choice but to have to work a little bit harder and a little bit smarter on our food choices so that we can live the best possible life. So if you click on the link, we can get started today. We can take the challenge, we can take 11 days out of our life to potentially live 365 days a year with abundant energy and feeling the way that we deserve to feel. So click on the link and join me. We're gonna make this happen, we're gonna get our energy so that you can be you. I'll see you on the next page.